Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kiri, and I work at the University of Manchester Career Service. I'm really pleased to welcome you today to this session, which is part of our Asia Careers Insight series taking place throughout the month of March. In this session, we've got the University of Liverpool, Sadie and Sabat, talking to you about top tips for video interviews. Just to let you know, we'll take about 30 to 40 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll take all your questions at the end. So without any further delay, I'd like to hand over to my two colleagues for their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sadie, and I'm an MSc Careers Consultant at the Management School at the University of Liverpool. I'm here with my colleague, who I'll let introduce herself.
Thank you, Sadie. Hi, everyone. My name is Sabat. I'm the Global Employability Officer at University of Liverpool Management School. I'm very happy to be with everyone today. I'll be joining in towards the end of the presentation.
Okay, so today, as you can see from the screen, we're looking at top tips for video interviews. So the Institute of Student Employees tells us that along with psychometric tests, video interviews are the most effective way for employers to assess candidates in the early stages of the recruitment process. And used more often than telephone interviews, role plays, group presentations. So this session, we're going to cover why employers use them, some tips how to prepare for them, think about the questions you might get asked, and so that's going to talk about employers, their perspective, their viewpoints, and she's got some really interesting quotes from employers as well. We've also got a couple of interactive activities for you to get involved in, so you can give us some feedback and share your experiences of interviews as well. So let's move on to the next slide. There we go. So I quite like this quote. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Is this the case today? It's quite an interesting point, really. Some employers may Google you, look at your LinkedIn profile before any interviews. But I still think, obviously, your application form is that first impression, but your video interview is the first time the employer is going to set eyes on you, and how you impress them, how you present the best version of yourself is what we're going to look at today. So hopefully by the end of this session, you'll understand and you'll know how to confidently prepare for a video interview. You'll have an understanding of the types of questions you might be asked, and recognise the importance of preparation. You know, preparation, I think, is key for video interviews, to help you feel more confident, and we're going to look at how you can do that as well. Please feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and we'll come to those towards the end. Okay, so first of all, I was going to do this poll, so if you could share the link in the chat now, that'd be great. It looks like I might have to come out of my screen share and go to the web browser, but what this is asking you is, how do you feel about video interviews? So
let me I'll put like the direct link in the chat area for everyone to be able to access the survey. Oh, sorry, let me just send the link again as a direct link.
It's not working on my screen, so I'll try and get away out of this screen a moment, and to give me a moment.
Let me just copy directly from my browser as well.
I'm just opening, I'll share my screen. Sorry, everyone. All great plans. Right, that's active. So if I go to share my screen again, hopefully you'll be able to see the responses coming in.
So yeah, I've just put the direct link in the chat area. So just feel free to click on that link and then put your responses there.
Brilliant. Oh, excellent. Thank you, everyone. I can see some responses coming. So you should see like a little green, like raindrop shape on the screen in front of you. And this was just really so we can gauge where you're at with it, but also to let you know you're not alone. So there's quite a few of you who are not sure about them, or clicking on the sad faces, you know, and you're not alone. A lot of people have concerns and don't really enjoy video interviews, and you're doing the right thing. You're here, you're in a really good place to get some advice. And it's really brilliant to see some people are feeling quite confident about them as well. And later in the session, we're going to have an opportunity for you to share advice with each other about how you've approached video interviews. So those of you who are maybe selecting the smiley faces and feel quite confident, it might be that you've got some really good tips to share with your peers here today. So yeah, you're not alone if you're feeling nervous, I think is a key thing to take out of that. Brilliant. So I was going to stop. I was going to do that, I think, and get the PowerPoint back up. Bear with me a moment. Current slide. Sure.
You can see your PowerPoint now.
Brilliant, thank you. It's showing on that anyway. Now I can't get onto my next page. Here we are. So, why do employers use video interviews? And I think having an understanding of why they use it might help you with your confidence and to feel better about them. For employers, it does reduce cost for them. But given the current environment with the global pandemic, more and more employees are using this type of resource. It is really flexible for both you as a candidate and the employer. Research done by Sonri, which is one of the video interviewing platforms, said that 60% of their online video interviews were completed over the weekend. So there's no need for you to miss any studies, any of your lectures. If you've got any work commitments, you can make it work for you. So, you know, it's really flexible. You can do it at a time that suits you. I think also telephone interviews for employees are quite time consuming. So only candidates with really strong applications are offered a telephone interview. However, this type of video interview in the early stage of the recruitment process means it doesn't take as much of the employee's time. So therefore they can put more people through to this stage. So you might find that people with weaker applications get through to a video interview in the early stages, which is brilliant because it means they are given the opportunity to shine at a video interview. Also, it gives more data to help the employees make decisions. And also it allows feedback. You can give employees feedback on the process, but also for you to get feedback. Some employees may let you go back and re-watch your video, but even if they don't, you can take notes of yourself, how it went, how you answered. So then if you get through to the next stage of the recruitment process, you've got that information to hand, or if you don't, you've got some information to sort of review and reflect on. So that's why employees are using it. So we thought we'd look at what to do before you even turn on that webcam. There's things that you can do to help you prepare, to make you feel more confident and ready for this process. As you would do with any application form or any form of interview, always research the company and the role. Employees want to see that you're motivated, that you understand the role and what you'll be doing day to day. They want to know that you're motivated to work for that company, and also that you've reflected on how your experience and skills meet their requirements. So company websites are the best starting point really for this. Many employees will tell you what they're looking for in terms of skills and attributes, and also the general parts of their website will include information on their values, their aspirations, their successes, their future plans. There might be case studies on there of, current graduates that are working there. Also look at any links to their social media feeds. So for example, if a company is tweeting about a subject, it means they're interested in it, and it's something you can maybe then bring in to your answers in the interview. Coming back to practice, you're going to see I'm going to keep dropping the word practice in throughout this session. Your university career service will probably have some software you can use. It might be Go Shortlisting, it might be Sonru, it might be Interview 360. So use those and you can watch yourself back and get some feedback from the careers department. But you can also use your phone or your iPad and just record yourself answering some questions. Get used to seeing yourself on the screen, and that will help you to perform better. Obviously, reread your application form, try and anticipate the questions and practice answering them. If you're nervous, give yourself as much practice time as possible. I think we're going to cover this later, but think about when you're practicing what questions they might ask you. Think about how you structure it using the STAR technique, for example. We'll cover that later. Again, if you're nervous, just practice as much as possible on camera, and just remember that they're looking at the content. They're probably looking a little bit at your technical skills, but research shows that nerves are at the bottom of the list in terms of what employees are looking for. So they're well trained to see past your nerves, and they know it's not a reflection of what you can bring to the role. So hopefully knowing that will make you feel a bit more relaxed. Practice the technology. Most employers will give you 1 or 2 questions to practice beforehand. So make sure you do that. Make sure your webcam's working. Make sure your internet connection is okay, and that it all works beforehand. That will help you feel more confident. Okay, so video interview tips. The picture here is me. So at Liverpool, we have Go Shortlist Me. And this is me using my mobile phone. So maybe not the best video angle, but just to give you an idea of what it might look like. So when you're doing the video interview, still dress as you would if you go for a face-to-face interview. Really important. The image that you project, remember that first impression we talked about? That first, you want to create that really good first impression. What you wear will help with that. And it will also help you feel more confident, I think, as well, more psychologically prepared for it. Be aware of your surroundings, your lighting, and just you can prepare that beforehand. Try and light yourself from in front rather than behind, or use natural lighting. Coming back to practice again, I'm told I'm drip feeding that in throughout everything today. So record yourself, see how you appear on camera. What's the tone of your voice like? What's the pace of your voice like? It's very tempting when you're doing a video interview to sort of look around a little bit, but try and use the camera. Imagine that's the employee's eyes, their face, and you're looking into them and keeping eye contact. You probably can't do that for the whole time. You may look away a little bit or down at your notes, and that's fine. But just be aware of your eye contact as well. And I think just remember, it is a real interview. It may not feel the same as going for a face-to-face interview, but your answers will be sort of weighted against the selection criteria, and decisions will be made on your interview just as it was in person. So that's why the preparation is still really important. Okay, so I mentioned you'll get an instructional video in time to practice the technology, but quite a good tip is that most employers will have a helpline or a telephone or something online that you can contact if you are really struggling with the technology, and don't be afraid to use that to contact them for help beforehand. I think it's important to think about the length of the question. Each question will be allocated a length of time. In general, this is just on average, it might be 30 seconds to read it and then up to 2 minutes to respond. Now, don't worry if you don't use the full 2 minutes. That's sort of the maximum time, really. And you might feel like, oh, I'm not going to cover everything I want to say in this question. It's the other end of that spectrum. And generally, you will have, at the end of your video interview, there will be a question that will allow you to add any additional points. So if you feel like you don't have enough time to cover a certain subject or highlight a point that you think is really relevant to the job and your suitability for it, you can always refer back to that in that last opportunity at the end to cover any additional points. Okay, so after the session, you will be sent a copy of the slides and a couple of videos. And one of the videos we're going to send is around sort of giving your best sort of the lighting and the camera angle. And it's only 2 minutes and it's really useful. And I think that fits in with this slide because it's about giving yourself the best chance of success. and thinking about the position of your camera and the lighting and things. I'm not going to go into lots of detail here, but do think about that. And after this session, have a little look at that video. I think you'll find it really useful. Think about the environment you're in. If there's an echo, which can sometimes happen, you can always put a few books in the room, you know, out of sight of the camera, so the recruiter can't see it, but that will help with the echo. I think it's really nice at the start to thank them for the opportunity, and again at the end to thank them for the, you know, so you've enjoyed the process and looking forward to hearing from them. You could also have the skills and qualities that the company is looking for stuck up behind your camera, so you can look at them and then you can include those in your answer and link that to your past experiences as well. So I think that's everything. Okay, so the point on the slide you might see, which is about try not to touch your face. Apparently research has been done, and I'm trying to get my source here from it. I can't find it now. And apparently people who seem to touch their faces, like in interviews and things, are seen to be not as trustworthy, because it can be a sign of shame and embarrassment as well. So people touch the face, people might think you're embarrassed and nervous. So a good tip is to have maybe a pen or an elastic band or a hair bubble in your hand, because you won't be able to see that. So you could have that out of shot and you could be playing with it, and that could help with your nerves and help keep your hands occupied. I know I'm someone who likes to talk with my hands, so I sometimes find that quite useful. We're going to cover STAR and structuring it, and I think we've covered everything. I think the other point to make there is make sure you read the question. So use that time to read it and understand it before you start answering it, and think about your language. I've probably done it today using filler words. It's almost on your brains trying to catch up. Try not to do that. A pause is fine. If you need a little pause to gather your thoughts, I think that's fine as well. Okay, so again, we've done another poll here, which is just what we've done. We've put together at the start of this presentation some tips that we've picked up along the way and talking to employers, and put them together for you. But I know some of you at the start said you clicked on the smiley faces, and you said you were quite confident about video interviews. You might all have had one recently. So if you've got any tips about how you prepared for video interviews, or if someone's given you some amazing advice, it would be really great if you could share that here, so we can all, it's anonymous, so no one will know who's posting it. You can also post it in the chat, and that is anonymous as well. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and switch back, I think, to my web browser.
Just to say, the poll link is in the chat area, so just pretty much like follow the link there to give your responses to the poll. And then I've also put the two videos you mentioned before, Sadie, so the students can access them now, but I'll make sure to circulate them after the presentation as well.
Oh, thank you. I'm just trying to get off the screen now.
Just below your camera icon, there should be another icon to share your screen.
I want to get to my web browser. Sorry, everyone. Technology. How do I close this screen? Oh, I see. Right, I know. Right, okay. You can probably sort it. I'm just going to go back to my other activities. I'm with it now. Okay, so hopefully you can all see that now. Oh, brilliant. So you've all got some really good advice coming in. Practice interview, and that's something you can do yourself, but also your career service will probably offer mock interviews. And I know at Liverpool, the video interview software we've got for practice, and you can select it by industry and things as well. I like that. Try to smile, definitely. They want to see you, don't they? Your personality and smiling, definitely. Mocking human friends, be confident. It's really brilliant. Ask questions. Yeah, we're going to be covering that, but you will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end, and having those prepared will really help. Okay, yeah, it's always look directly into the webcam. Brilliant. Looking at different questions to ask. Be yourself. Practice. Oh, I like that. Talk to someone who works at the organisation, and that's something we haven't actually covered today, but that's a really good piece of advice. And with the likes of LinkedIn and the alumni search on LinkedIn, you can use your network to try and find someone who works there and get that insight beforehand. That'll definitely a really good piece of advice there. Any new ones coming in? Record, practice, review it, definitely. Research the company, yeah. And there's loads of, we mentioned using the company website for research, but there's annual reports. And also I know like libraries have lots of databases in your university with like Hoover's and MarketLine. And they have loads of good stuff on SWOT analysis and things. So they could be really useful. Really, because the people are reviewing them, brilliant. Avoid sounding and acting arrogant, yes. Yeah, be familiar with your CV. Use the STAR technique. Oh, brilliant. You've all got this in the bag, I think. There's some really good advice here. Maybe what we could do is I could summarise this and we could send it out after the session, if you think that would be useful.
Definitely, I think that would be really nice for everyone to see.
Yeah. I'm just aware of the time, so I'll stop sharing that. But thank you, everyone. I think, you know, peer-to-peer advice is definitely the way forward. That's some really good advice there. Right, so let me go back to my slide. Okay, so I'm not going to cover all of these types of interview questions, but these are some of the ones you might get. Some are probably more for face-to-face rather than video interviews. We're going to come on to strengths and competency-based questions in the next couple of slides, because I think they're the ones that tend to come up in video interviews. But you may get asked scenario questions, which could be, I don't know, what would you do if a member of your team was underperforming? So almost imagining you're in that role and a situation arises and how you would deal with that. Off the wall questions might be completely random, like, I don't know, how many people are on Facebook at 2 a.m. in the morning in London? And I think what we're looking at that is sort of how you respond to pressure, how you think logically and something. Well, okay, there's so many people living in London, and there might be 10% of people up at that time of night. And it's just the way you work. So there's no right or wrong answer, really. It's just seeing how you respond to that pressure. Again, questions about you know, your skills, the role you're applying for, your understanding of the role, and your understanding of the business and why you want to work for that organisation. And I think that came across in the feedback and advice you were giving each other. It was about researching the organisation. Someone mentioned trying to speak to someone who works there. All that is really good preparation for that. And also the business sector, you know, thinking your commercial awareness, read a newspaper, you know, have a look at the FT if you get that through your university, or whatever method you use to keep up to date with what's going on in business. In case there might be, you can then bring that into your answers as well. Okay, so competency and strength-based interviews. There's been, I think, some quite a big shift towards strength-based interviews over the past few years, and they're designed to get to the heart of who you are. They may be harder to prepare for because they're not going to ask you about past experiences. They're more looking at your natural strengths, your likes, your behaviours, and they're looking for evidence of performance, energy, how authentic you are. It's like what you love to do. You know, they want someone's going to love doing this job, so they're going to be successful and enjoy it. So an example of a strength-based question could be, you know, what do you call a good day? How do your friends describe you? Whereas competency is more based on sort of past experiences, so what you can do. So here's some examples on this slide here. So strength-based, we mentioned some of those already. How would your friends describe you? Do you give up easily? Whereas competency, more, give me an example of when you've led a team, or describe an event where you've demonstrated initiative. So you might find a mixture, you might find more competency, and employees may tell you ahead of the interview what sort of interview they're doing with you. And if they don't, there's no harm in asking. They might not tell you, but you can always ask. So to help you approach both of these types of interviews, questions, a really good technique start. And I know someone mentioned this in the poll a few moments ago. Another one is CAR, context, action, result, but we're looking at STAR today. So it's just a really good way for you to structure your answers. If you're feeling nervous, or if you're worried you're going to maybe talk too much and not get everything you want to say into the 2 minutes you have, this can help you structure it. So the situation and task is sort of introducing, you know, where you were, what the situation was, what you needed to do, and what your responsibilities were. I think the action is probably, I don't know, 60 to 70% of your answer, and it's ideally you'd link that to the skills they're looking for as well. So how did you go about it, and what did you actually do? And then you can't tell a story without giving an ending and a closure. So results, what was the impact, what was the end result? You can also add in reflection. So this is an example from a student around tell me a time when you've resolved a problem successfully. And this has got reflection built into it. And you'll see from the reflection, and they talk there about communication skills, problem solving skills, but there's no reason why you couldn't embed that in the action. You know, I use my strong problem solving skills to etc. to that sort of embed it that way, if that makes sense. So this is just an example for you. And I'm sure your university career services will have lots of examples and leaflets on their careers platforms that you can access as well. So we're nearly there, you'll be pleased to know. Audience, again, you're all ahead of the game. You mentioned about preparing questions to ask the employer, and that's brilliant. Yeah. So at the end of the video interview, you will probably be given 2 minutes for any additional points. This is where you could ask the employee questions, and ideally try and ask things that can't be answered by looking at the website. And that's where, if you've done your research on the company and the role, you'll probably generate some really good questions to ask them. There's a few here to get you started as well. So, you know, I'd say the only thing is don't ask about perks or salary at this point. It's very early in the recruitment process. So wait till you get the job offer before you do that. There's a few questions there. And again, you'll have these slides so you can use those if you think they'd be useful. And then phew, it's over, relax. You know, make yourself a cup of tea or whatever you do to celebrate finishing something stressful. I think it's always really good manners to say thank you to the employer. Can either do that at the end of the video interview or send them an email saying you enjoyed the experience, thank you for the opportunity, you look forward to hearing from them. Then there's that self-reflection element. So review your performance, make a note of the questions you were asked, how you think you answered them. There might be some that you go, yeah, I did all right there. But there might be some that you struggled with that you then think, well, that's something I need to go away and develop and get some help with. And then you can go to your career service or go and practice some more, whichever approach suits you. And then ask for feedback. I mentioned before, not all employees will give feedback at this stage, but some will, or some may let you go back and watch your video interview again so you can review it yourself. Try and learn from your mistakes, but don't obsess, don't get stressed. All you can do is then move on to the next interview. That's in the past, what's going to come up in the future. And don't be too hard on yourself. Interviews are stressful. I think probably the more you do, the more you'll feel relaxed about it, and that's where the practice comes in again. If you practice beforehand, it will help. But there'll be things beyond your control, so just try and relax, and then start the cycle again with the practicing. So So that's sort of in terms of tips, how you can prepare, the type of questions you might get asked. You've all shared some really good advice with each other. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Sabat, who is going to talk you through some feedback from employees. So I'm going to turn my camera off.
Thank you very much, Sadie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Thank you, Sadie, and I hope everyone's found the tips Sadie has shared with us very useful. They're really good practical tips. And before this presentation, we went around asking a few employers what they think about interviews, what advice they have for the students. So we've gathered a few quotes, which I think are quite useful because you will be able to find out that these quotes link with the tips and the skills Sadie mentioned link up really well. So the first one here is from PayPal. So when I asked the PayPal Asia Overseas Graduate Recruitment Manager what they expect from the candidate in an interview, whether it's in person or video interviews, the first thing they mentioned was the STAR method, which Sadie has mentioned. And she said, we use competency-based questions at PayPal and encourage you use the STAR method in your answers. So I think it's worth to really look at what STAR method is and how you can incorporate your own experience, professional experience, and answer the questions in this in STAR method. So the employers are able to get the best out of your answers to judge your abilities and your personalities and so on. And also the next point she mentioned comes back to the last slide Sadie has showed us, which is be ready to ask questions. So prepare your questions, go in and ask your questions, because this is your chance to show what research you've done and also your passion and about the opportunity and your curiosity and also your the other side of your personality. So I think both points are reflected in the previous slide Sadie has mentioned. I think Sadie, there was another slide before this, before PayPal. Can we go back? Maybe it's changed a bit. It's okay. So the next one is from KPMG. KPMG is this one's from the KPMG China Graduate Recruitment Manager. So she has given us a few examples of what kind of questions they would typically ask in an interview. The first one is, give me an example of when you have had a business idea. Describe a time when you had to make a quick decision. Tell me about a time when you went out of your comfort zone. I think these will fall into the category of scenario questions. Again, now you know that these are the questions that would get asked quite frequently. You can go back to the STAR method. Okay, I have this scenario. How can I answer this question using the STAR method? So it's good to know. It's good to be prepared for different scenarios according to the job description that you're applying for. Next, please. This one's from L'Oreal. It's from the L'Oreal Asia Customer Experience Manager. So when we asked, what do you look for in a candidate? And the answer was, I will look for two main things: the interview's approach to adversity and their knowledge of our company. Again, they might use scenario questions to check how you deal with stress, with deadlines at work, and etc. And also they would like to know how much research you've done into the role, into the company, and you understand the role and understand the company culture. This is very important for them. And he said these two will give him a good insight into whether the candidate will be a good fit into the team. And also the next thing is what Sadie has covered at the beginning of this presentation, wearing a nice suit and a tie or a formal outfit. We know that in video interviews, you probably only see the top half of yourselves, but I think it's important to dress in a professional manner, in a manner that would make you feel professional and confident, that would in return reflect in your interview performance. I think we're missing one slide here. It was a I'll just go through that myself. It was a quote from the British Chamber of Commerce in China. So the vice chair at the chamber gave me an example of their recent interview that they have done with a fresh graduate. So at the BritCham, when they have positions available, especially when they interview students who have just graduated, they really like asking questions about what they do in their spare time, their hobbies, and etc., because they would like to find out more about the candidate apart from their professional and academic experience. So they've asked the candidate, what do you do in your spare time? The answer was, the candidate said, I like mountain climbing. I've recently organized 3 trips with my friends, and we've done this. So the answer was very detailed. And the vice chancellor said all he heard from her answer was, this is a very brave person, this is a very organized person. So you can tell that an answer to your about your own hobby, what you do in your spare time, if it's well structured, if it's detailed, and if it can reflect your skills, then it's a lot more persuasive than just describing yourself as a brave person, an organized person. So I think it's also good to think about these type of questions, which might come up towards the end of an interview, about what you do in your spare time, about your hobby. It's a good one to think about while you're preparing for your interview. Okay, that's all the quotes that we have today to share with you. I hope you find the presentation useful. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. We'll try our best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready for some questions then now?
Yes, we are.
Wonderful, because quite a few of them have come in. Quite a few students are asking if you'll be willing to share your slides afterwards with them as well, so we can circulate them. I hope that won't be an issue. I'm just going to go through, because we've got a lot of questions that have come in. I'm just going to try and pick out some generic ones to pose to you. So one student has asked, I know you've mentioned that, at the first interview, for example, for the students not to ask any questions around salaries, but what if the company specifically asks the students about their salary expectations? How would you recommend they respond to that question?
I think if they're asking you directly, I think that's absolutely fine to answer that. Will be my, and they'll probably in the job adverts will give you an indication of the salary range. So if you're prepared for that, or you could do research around other positions from similar organisations, what the salary is there, and think about your experience. So have some knowledge of why you're pitching yourself at a certain point in that salary bands. But I think if they're asking you, I think that's fine. I think it's just if you're sort of in the early stages of the recruitment process and asking questions around that, it might show your motivation is more money related rather than wanting to work for that company in that role, if that makes sense. I don't know if Sabat's got anything to add to that.
Thanks, Sadie. I agree with Sadie. I think if the question was asked by the employer directly, if it was something they want to get some information from the candidate, I think it's okay to answer this question. And as Sadie said, just gather some information about their pay structure at different levels of the company. This information is sometimes available on the company's main site, or if you go to different forums where people ask similar questions, you can find out information so you can answer accordingly. Thanks.
I will agree with that, and I will say that we've got websites like Glassdoor, even LinkedIn might sometimes show like salary information. And the prospects website includes what a competitive salary is for a specific sector, so you can go in prepared, and don't downplay yourself. If you know what the average salary range is say your expectations, but then it's always a negotiation that comes after occasionally, or they might even like give you more than what you're asking for because they want to stay competitive. I hear that happening a lot, actually, students going into interviews and downselling their salary expectations, but then the company actually paying them more than that because they need to stay, they need to like stay competitive. So occasionally students will go into interviews and not know what to answer, or really struggle with the question that might cause like some awkward like silence, or they might get like flustered. How would you recommend they deal with that sort of like situation where they got a really difficult question, or they've lost their trail of thought, and how to like help them like not show that they don't know what they're essentially answering?
Oh, I know, nerves. They can, yeah.
I think it shows. You can't really hide it, but you've got some tips around that, perhaps?
Yeah, I think maybe when you get the 30 seconds to read the question, you use the whole 30 seconds and really read the question, and hope that will help you. I think about what you can do to make yourself feel calmer. So if you do, I know if I get nervous, taking deep breaths, or I mentioned playing with an elastic band or something out of sight, just to help keep you calm. I think you might get 2 minutes to answer the question. You don't have to use all of that 2 minutes. So you might just have a moment, think like, there's no reason why you can't take a few moments of the recordings when you're answering it, just to gather your thoughts. And then you can answer the question. I think as well, if you've got things like post-it notes to put maybe behind your camera, or some of the key skills or some of your experiences that you want to highlight, you could maybe look at those for some inspiration as well. And I think if you do flip up one answer completely, I'd say don't worry, just forget about it and move on to the next, okay? Because the questions might be weighted, so the one you maybe think you haven't done very well at might not be a priority for that employee. They might be more interested in what you've got to say about other subjects as well. So that would be my thoughts, but again, I'm sure my colleagues here have got other comments as well.
Well, what Sadie says is correct. I think I agree, but what I would add is what Sadie has said at the beginning of this presentation, that a lot of the employers are very used to these situations, and so they would look past your nerves. So I think knowing that in advance should help you calm down a bit, because they know that just a moment of nervousness is not a reflection of your view as a person. But for me personally, I say what helped me was just practice, recording myself, seeing myself on the screen, getting used to that, and picking up these little things that I do that might not be too well on the screen. I think just practicing in general will help the nerves, yeah. But don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah, I think it's what we mentioned before in the presentation as well, that certain questions will certainly come up, like why do you want this role, or why are you interested in this company? So it's very easy if you've got that answer prepared to like flow. And then, if it's a question that you don't understand, try to reread it. Maybe you've missed something, or try to, try your best, but then don't get hung up on that one question. Move on. Like as soon as a question finishes, you move into the next. A student is wondering whether after they finish with their interview, should they contact the HR to actively try to get a response out of them, whether they've been successful or not, what's the right time frame, and then generally we can give some tips about, do we follow up after an interview or not?
Yeah, I think most employees will tell you when you get invited for your video interview, will probably outline the process and the timescales for informing you of whether you're moving forward to the next stage. So I wouldn't maybe contact HR initially, because they've probably got a high volume of video interviews that they'll be reviewing. So hopefully they'll give you a time frame as to when you can hear. If, I don't know, a large amount of time has gone past and you still haven't heard, and obviously you'll have their email details from when they invited you. There's no harm in dropping them an email, but first just check what timescales they're working to, I would suggest. And then, yeah.
I think, sorry, Sabah, do you want to add something?
No, I'm okay. We can move on. Next
Just to
question.
say, yes, I will agree. Is allow for a reasonable time frame to inquire about the progress of your application, because they might be doing several interview rounds at different stages, or it might take a while. Some of them unfortunately will disclose in advance that if you're not successful, you won't hear back from them. You will only hear from them if you're successful. But one thing you can do is, after the interview, you can always follow up with a thank you email. It won't give you the job, it won't put you ahead of the competition, but it'll be a nice way for you to become a little bit more visible and come across as a person that they will willingly work with, because you've got like nice manners, and you can follow like professional etiquette. Like it will give you like a few additional points, but it won't give you the job. But it's a nice thing to do after an interview, I think, to just follow up and say thank you, not inquire about your interview. However, just say thank you for giving me this opportunity. So some of the students are worrying that how do they answer these questions that come up like in video interviews if they do not have sufficient professional experience? What other examples can they use beyond part-time roles? Will volunteering be something they can use part-time, like extracurricular activities, group projects? I think I've answered it, but I'm looking forward to like
I
your
agree,
own
yeah.
thoughts as well.
No, definitely, everything you just said, really good ideas. I think employers, obviously they value professional work experience, but they recognise that not all students have that. And also they see, volunteering work, being a student rep, or being involved in student society, for example, part-time work, all of that is evidence for you of your skills and your abilities, and drawing on a range of experiences from your life is a good thing. You don't want to use the same examples maybe in every answer that you give. So yes, I think if you've got in your head the things you're involved in and what skills it's given you, it doesn't have to be professional work experience. I think employers understand that you can still gain skills and provide evidence through a range of extracurricular and personal, hobbies as well, I think.
That's true. I'll just add that in the QS International Employer Survey that was out, I think, November last year, there was something about this specific question. So the employers, most of the employers said where you did your internship or what you did, if it's a group project, if it's volunteering, whether it's in a big company or whether it's in a small place, whether if it's just a project at the campus. For them, that's not the most important thing they look at. The most important thing is how you presented this experience in the interview or in your CV. So I think this again goes back to the STAR method. How did you present it? Did they manage to understand what you achieved from that experience? So I think before the interview, it's really important to just list down all your experiences on a piece of paper, then link it up with the job description. So if they ask a question about communication, which experience you going to use to answer that question? So I think how you present it should be the most important thing.
And then if I can very shamelessly plug a session that we're running next week with Ashton University, if you're struggling to, present that information, we have a session next week about articulating your career motivations and how to really articulate your experience. So do consider joining that session. But I think I'll stand to where Sadie is, and I thought it was like really important. It's don't repeat the same experience over and over again, because then it shows that you don't have anything else. So don't be afraid to, if they're asking you for teamwork, to talk about group projects you've done at uni, or if they talk about, your communication skills, to talk about a marketing campaign you've done to, I don't know, promote your YouTube videos or your student society events, that sort of like thing. And then, don't downplay, hobbies, sports that you've participated in, or any other sort of like experience, as long as you show that it's relevant or that you've gained transferable skills from it, feel free to mention it in an interview. Some students are wondering, a little bit unrelated, but like during first year insights sessions, employers may ask you like some sort of like questions. How would you recommend sorry, I've lost my trail of thought there. I think I wasn't reading the question properly. Some students are wondering what sort of like questions can employers ask you during, inside sort of like weeks, virtual sort of like office tours that they do, and then what sort of like questions would you recommend they have prepared to ask back to those employers in that less of a formal interview environment where you're still getting to know the company and they're getting to know you?
Yeah, so I think in terms of getting to know the company, I know we encourage students, don't we, to sort of have what we call informational interviews, and that's sort of, any chance you get to meet people from an organisation that you aspire to work for. It could be through an alumni event or a careers talk, and definitely that's a really good chance for you to learn more about the company, the roles they recruit for, how they recruit, when they recruit, what they look for. And you can ask those questions in those sort of informal, environments. I know a lot of careers fairs now are virtual, and you can quite just chat, can't you, and while you're using your computer and ask these sort of questions. So I think building that rapport with them is really good and really helpful. So I hope that answers that question. In terms of the questions you might ask, I suppose it goes back to the research. If you're aware of what's going on in the business news, in the sectors you're aspiring to work in, you can ask questions about that, their opinions on it. If you follow them on social media, you can see what they're interested in and what they're doing, so you can ask more about that as well. In terms of the question about the first year insight sessions, is that about how you can ask questions to the employers and what?
Yeah, I think it's what questions can you, I think the employers wouldn't really be asking you any questions during the day. It'd be mostly them introducing the company. But would you say that the questions that you will ask during a video interview are on par with what you will ask the employers on the day to sort of like become a little bit more familiar with what they do?
Yeah, I don't see why. Yeah, I think any questions that you come across that you think are going to give you an insight and help you, because even though I suppose those sort of events, they're not a formal interview, but by asking good questions, it could help you stand out a bit more and be more memorable to that recruiter. So yeah, I'd say you could definitely transfer those questions to that environment. I don't know if Sabat or got any comments?
I think so. And then if I can just ask one more question around, so I think we talk a little bit more about answering those, strength-based and competency-based questions. What about, do you have any tips for students who are meant to pre-record like a presentation or show their analysis on a business study or a business case? What tips would you have for those students who are meant to like pre-record the presentation?
I'm going to sound like a broken record and say practice. I know some people say if you practice a presentation too much, you might come across as a bit false. But I think the more you practice and know the content of what you want to say, the more natural you can be. So again, practice presenting. I know your university probably runs skill sessions on presentation skills. Go along to things like that and just practice that, and any analysis that you've got to show, make sure you're comfortable with it, you understand it, you can talk about it, and the more you practice that presentation, the more comfortable you'll feel when you do it. And it might be a bit weird if you've got to record it and there's no audience there. But I would say just practice, think about the tone of your voice, the pace, make sure what you say is clear and understandable. Think about the structure of your presentation. So I think I could probably talk to presentations for quite a while, but again, I'm sure your institutions will have support. I know on the Liverpool website there's support on presentations and interviews and things. And again, I'm sure you could practice it in front of the careers staff as well. But again, over to my colleagues, they might probably have some great insights as well.
Oh, I was just going to actually add the last point you said. So just make good use of the career services. There's always a mock interview practice sessions or one-to-ones that you can use just to. It's good to have someone outside, maybe your friend circle or someone else, to give you feedback. So I think that would be a good thing. And just to think about. Because it will be in a recorded interview, so it should be really, really good, because you have the chance to do it on your own time when you're relaxed and calm. So really practice quite a few times, record quite a few times, and then just make sure it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I will agree. It's the same principles that apply to any interview. Find a quiet space. Tell your flatmates or your family if you're still with them right now to, not walk in on you during that time, and to try and keep it down. That time is reserved for your interview. And then generally look at the camera. Prepare a script for your presentation, then break it down into like easy language, short sentences, something that you really understand and you can memorize and you can deliver without showing that you don't understand what you're talking about, because you really need to understand and provide like digestible like content. But I think is what we've previously told, it's all about preparing and practicing. So I think this is all the time we've had for this session today. Just to reiterate, the session is being recorded, and then we'll circulate the recording afterwards, and then so you can revisit the slides as well, and then 2 additional videos that you can use to gain some additional insights into the interview process. Any final thoughts, any final tips perhaps from the 2 of you, or some a closing thought perhaps to leave our students with?
I think, have confidence in yourself. They are nerve-wracking interviews. I know they are, but I think, you're all, from what I've seen today through the engagement with giving advice to each other, you've all got some really good ideas and basis for how to prepare for your video interview. So have confidence in that. Utilise all the support that's available from friends, family, your university career service. Prepare, have confidence, and if the first one doesn't go that well, just try and forget about it and move on to the next one. It's all the experience that will help you. So good luck going forward and with all your application forms. I wish you every success. And if Sabat's got any other comments to make.
Oh, thank you, Sadie. I think Sadie's given really good advice there. I just say, especially with the video interviews, when you start, just smile. I think just starting it with a smile, you can see yourself on the screen. It will help lift up your confidence instantly, and it will give a good impression to the interviewer as well. So I'd say smile, along with the STAR method and everything else we talked about, would be a good start. And good luck to everyone.
I think this is what I'm going to keep from the session, is come across as someone who's like willing to learn, and that if they work with you, you'll be like a nice, pleasant colleague by smiling. And then the more that you practice and the more interviews that you do, the better that you're going to get. I'd really like to say a warm thank you to both of you for this excellent presentation. I've certainly learned a lot as well, and I'm sure the students have as well. To say again a warm thank you to the University of Liverpool and all our partner universities who are participating in our Asia Careers Insight series. I put the link below in the chat area, and then in the handout section you can download the full schedule of sessions if anyone wants to sign up to any other sessions taking place in the next 2 weeks. But thank you so much once again. It's been such a pleasure, and I'm sure our students will be coming back to us with more questions around video interviews and asking for more help moving forward.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Have a lovely weekend, everyone. Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.